You're not getting any younger, so
if I'm not getting any younger, just fully embrace and appreciate everything I'm surrounded with now.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Here's what I know about life. You think you know everything. Who you are, where you want to live, what you want to do, and then one day, one ordinary day, you get a phone call or a text message or a monologue from someone you love or about something you love, and everything changes. All of a sudden, you realize that you're not your 9-to-5 job, not your barely affordable apartment, not the on-sale outfit you bought that you hope will make your attitude look expensive. Not any of it. You realize, stripped down of it all, that you are just a person, and people make mistakes. And deep down, not you, not I, not the person we admire on the internet has any clue what they're doing, what they want, what will become of them. Which is why sometimes you have to walk away from it all. You have to book that one-way ticket. You have to promise yourself you'll say yes to new things and no to old ways. And when you get lost, because you will get lost, you have to remind yourself that that is just part of the adventure. Meet Cara Thomas, who spent over 10 years inventing award-winning products for Fortune 100 companies. She found that adventure and playfulness led to breakthroughs. In need of that personally, she started Serenflipity as an experiment, and it ended up changing her life. It started with a one-way flight to Mumbai and 90 challenges written by 90 friends, clients, and strangers. Each day she flipped a card, followed its direction, and blogged the tale. Welcome to the show, Cara.
I'm so happy we get to literally sit on my couch, cross-legged, wearing the same exact outfit.
For those of you who can't see us right now, we are actually wearing the same exact thing, which is hilarious because we didn't plan it. It is an all-black outfit, so it's not super crazy that we're wearing the same thing, but it's also really cool.
Yeah, we could totally rob a house right now. We look like burglars.
Seriously, I think if we went outside and we walked around here with a black ski cap on, people would be a little bit nervous. They'd be like, who are these two girls that kind of look like sisters and are probably going to rob us right now? Thank you so much. Today's Friday, so I want to ask you, what's the coolest thing that happened to you this week?
The coolest thing that happened to me this week. I've had so many cool things happen in the past week. I don't know what's in the stars right now. I went on a sailing adventure and saw whales last Saturday.
Where did you go?
We just went out through Marina del Rey and kind of up through Santa Monica. So that was incredible. And in my 3.5 years in LA, I had not been sailing. So that was a new adventure. And I had a really funny thing happen yesterday, which is just one of those little nudges that you're on the right track. I have a bunch of meetings coming up with some new people in a few weeks. And out of the blue, decided to text an old friend who is in the industry I'm having meetings in, and was like, let me just see if you know any of these people that I'm meeting, and ran off a few names and companies. And he calls me 10 minutes later and said, you know what, one of those guys is an old friend. I'm having coffee with him in an hour. So that was one of those things where it's just you get little nudges on that you're on the right track. I like to make sure I don't forget those, and to make sure that I kind of keep them in mind, because I think it's easy to think about the really big, cool things that happen, like seeing a whale or some sort of big, crazy event. But those little coincidences are the things that I wake up the next morning and I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track. Things are aligning.
I find that usually when those things happen, it's because you did something to make it happen. Whether you spoke up about it, you talked to a person about it, you got off your couch and did something about it, and then the next giant step happened, you know? So, like, there are some times in my own life where I'm scared to tell people what's going on, but then I realize, like, you never know who you're going to talk to, right? Like, if you didn't tell that person in your life, hey, do you by any chance know anyone? Or, you know, they might not have said, well, I do know this person and I am meeting with them, you know?
Right.
It's like weird things happen when you literally put something into the universe.
Completely. And for me, a lot of it is following that intuition, sort of following that crazy hunch. And you never know what's going to happen. If I decided to text him today, it would have been, oh, I met with him yesterday, which would have been equally interesting. But the fact that it was an hour before he was meeting with this random person who I don't know, who I will know in a few weeks, was such a reminder that it's really important to follow those little hunches, as crazy as they seem. You know, there's something there.
Sometimes I feel like when I have those crazy hunches, my body feels like really weird. Like I get like a knot in my stomach, or like I get like a burning in my chest. Do you have like any weird thing that happens to your body when you're like, okay, I know I need to like randomly talk to this person today or do something? Like, does your body ever go through anything like that?
Completely. I think you described it really well. It's sort of like a wave rising in my body. There's a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of, oh my goodness, I totally need to do this, or that trepidation before talking to someone. But also I'd say there's kind of a deep knowing, like it feels like a sort of strong, solid feeling. And for me, what I've been starting to find is there's a difference between that feeling and then kind of the self-will feeling of, oh my God, I need to do this right away, right now, which I think is more driven in ego or in fear. And that feels a lot more anxious. And that feels more like, if I don't do this right now, it's never going to happen. But a lot of times that can still be a good idea tomorrow, but there's a different feeling where it feels a little bit more grounded and a little bit, I would say, less attached to the outcome of, oh, let me just text this person and see. Like, I have no agenda whatsoever. I'm just genuinely curious, and then something lines up. But if I have an outcome in mind, it's a very different feeling. And that's usually when I know I need to sleep on something. It'll still be a good idea tomorrow.
That's really interesting, because are you the kind of person who talks to yourself? Do you ever have like a monologue that you say to yourself out loud to pump you up or to get you through something?
More in my head, sometimes in my car. I definitely sing in my car. I have some internal, external monologues.
What kind of things do you say to yourself?
Well, when I'm saying nice, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it has been, and maybe other women or listeners can relate to this too, there can be kind of a mean voice in my head sometimes of, I can go from a place of being or thinking that I'm doing something where I'm like, yes, this is the best idea. And 2 minutes later, I'd be like, no, this is a terrible idea. So a lot of it is getting out of that negative thought and sort of talking to myself in a gentle way of like, you know what, let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. Okay. You know, like talking to myself like I'm a 6-year-old almost.
How do you press the pause button on that negative voice? I mean, sometimes I have that voice and it's so suffocating that I just don't do anything, and I don't do anything for a while. So how do you tell yourself enough? Like, I have to stop with this voice and just go do something differently.
A lot of times it's talking to other people. So I have a few advisors and very close friends that I've learned to reach out to in those times. I used to reach out after, but now I'm learning to reach out in the moment or kind of during a little bit of a negative spiral, and they can usually talk me out of it. Sometimes they'll yell at the negative voice for me, which is really funny.
You should name it something so you can.
I do. Mine has a name.
What is it? I was gonna ask you, then I'm like, she's gonna think I'm crazy if I'm like, tell me what your voice's name is.
I love that we've just dove right into this.
I just love it. What is the name?
Her name is Esmeralda.
No way.
Yeah.
Why? Sounds like a Disney princess, though.
She's kind of an old lady with a cigarette, Esmeralda. She's like, this is a terrible idea. You should not do this. This is probably gonna fail.
I love it. I could totally picture her like this old New Yorker, you know, probably someone that you used to live next to or know from New York.
Exactly. My old neighbor. So, but there is something, and it sounds a little bit cheesy, but there is something about disassociating that voice or giving it a characteristic so it's not me necessarily, where I can be like, okay, that's just Esmeralda trying to keep me safe, you know.
She's back.
And she's got her motivations too. But yeah, I think a lot of it is now that I've learned to identify that voice and honestly to take actions through it of, okay, well, just keep creating, just keep producing, just keep doing what I've been doing. And if it's a failure, it's a failure, and I'll know, and it'll be a good story. And if it's a success, I've broken through a limitation. So
do you ever find that some of the things you do in life are to prove people wrong? And who are those kinds of people?
I like to think of it as proving people right. So I think about people who supported me and people who believe in me, and I want to prove them right. I want to prove them right for backing me as an entrepreneur, backing me as a woman or a partner or a friend. So I like to think of it as proving my friends and family and supporters right.
I love that. I think it's a way more positive approach than how I like to think of things, which is like, how can I prove people wrong? Just to show them that I can do it, or even that voice inside of my head that I can do it, you know? But I think if you do flip it and you think to yourself, how can I prove people right? It's a more positive way of pushing yourself. You know, it's a way of waking up in the morning and saying, this person told me I can do it. I want to show them that I can, you know? And I think that keeps you going in the long term, whereas the negative flip side of it makes you go crazy. And
Absolutely.
Gets you stressed out beyond belief. So your journey has been so fascinating to me, and I've loved reading about it. I've loved talking to you about it. I want to start in the year 2013. Because that's a year that I've heard you say multiple times was a year that you felt stuck, which I find to be such an incredible feeling, because a lot of people go through it throughout their lives and they don't know how to identify it, they don't know how to get over it, and they don't know how to admit that they feel that way. So what was happening to you in 2013 when you felt stuck?
So when I felt stuck, and honestly, I didn't know I was stuck until I got unstuck. So
Interesting.
I think you bring up a really important point of sometimes when we're stuck, we don't even know.
Yeah.
And things just change gradually, and it sort of hits a bottom where you realize you can't really go on doing what you've been doing anymore. And I think sometimes with being stuck, we think that we're just catapulted in and we know that we're stuck, but sometimes it takes a little while and it can be a bit of a process. So for me, I think what was happening was, you know, I grew up in New York and I'd been working at the same job for about 6 years at the time. Amazing company. Absolutely adore them. But for me, it was less about the outsides and it was more about my attitude and how I was showing up. So I was getting burnt out at work. I was exhausted. It was sort of 80-hour weeks, and
That's crazy.
it was crazy, and it was amazing at the same time. I loved what I was doing, traveling all the time, but feeling really disconnected from myself and sort of looking back, realizing I was living on autopilot.
Did you have a life outside of work during those 80 hours a week?
I had friends, but it would be an aberration if I was in town to hang out and do something. And I started to feel like the guest in my own life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, the flip side to it was because I was traveling so much and sort of doing all of these things, I started to realize how to live a flexible, open life and to be able to feel at home in different places. And that was definitely a lesson I learned after my sabbatical when I moved to Singapore. Was like, okay, like how do I apply these principles of adventure and flipping my attitude? And if I'm going to be traveling all the time, like make the most of it, you know? And it sounds like a luxury problem. It was an incredible opportunity to be able to travel so much. And it also made me realize how much I was craving community and craving stability and really craving grounding with a group of friends, being close to my family, having a routine, and just kind of living in that way. So I'd say back in 2013, I was feeling stuck. I was feeling burnt out. I was going through a breakup. So I'd been in a long-term relationship with someone who was a great guy, but it wasn't the right fit. And that was really sad, you know, and it wasn't a breakup where it was necessarily anyone had done anything wrong. So there was no one to be mad at.
Which is almost harder,
Sometimes
right?
that's really hard. So it was sort of feeling sad about that, which I think, you know, breakups can be a great catalyst for creativity and force us into creating new things, ways to kind of get out of that heartbreak and pain.
Why is that? I find that too. I mean, I find like every time I've been broken up with or I've gotten out of a relationship, I produce my best work. And I think, I'm not sure why that happens to me. I think it's really because I feel like I've lost a lot. and I have nothing else to lose. So that you just power through. You don't have as much fear. You don't care about rejection. I feel like it's because you just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Why do you think you've been more creative after breakups?
Well, I think my heart is open. Even if it's broken, it's open, right? And there's something about having an open heart and unbridled passion. And I think creating things can get us out of pain. Like when I think about recommendations that people give to get over something, that people always recommend doing things. And I'm on the fence about that. I think it's important to do things and move forward, but I also think it's important to feel your feelings and allow yourself to be sad and process and go through grief and not just move through life in actions necessarily. And I think that might have been part of what I was doing as well, is sort of just like, okay, I just need to get through the next day. And sort of that mix of feeling burnt out, feeling stressed, feeling stuck, honestly, probably going through a bit of anxiety and depression as well. And I think the best way I can describe it is every morning waking up and having that sinking feeling of like, what's going to happen today, or being afraid to check my email and to see what was coming in. The more I talk about that with people, the more I realize or hear other people have the same feeling.
Yeah.
And I think what Serenflipity or the trip or kind of my sabbatical, like after I got unstuck, did for me was shifting me from an attitude of waking up in the morning being like, oh, what's going to happen today, to, ooh, what magical thing is going to happen today? So it was a lot of being able to change my attitude through changing my actions.
When you were in that moment of heartbreak and then also just sitting at your job thinking, I don't know how much longer I can do this, a lot of people take that feeling and they make it linger for years. Mm-hmm. How did you realize I'm stuck or I'm not happy and I have to do something about it right now?
It was a mix of knowing I had to do something and the opportunity presenting itself, which for me has been a pattern of need and looking at what's in front of me and how I can take advantage of what's being presented and the opportunities at hand. So I think for me, it was probably a bit of a longer process that I didn't realize until, I was waking up in the morning, just not feeling good. Like I felt like my life was kind of living in black and white versus in vibrant color. And I'd had a few periods of that in the past too. And for me at this point, I had the opportunity to take a sabbatical. So I'd been working at the same company for a while, incredible company where after 5 years, they give you the opportunity to take 3 months.
Wow.
And I knew I wanted to travel. I knew that travel would be something that would help me get unstuck, but I also didn't want to just be a tourist traveling around and taking selfies. So I started to think about what I could do to feel alive again. And the thing that makes me feel most alive is connecting with other people and having unexpected experiences.
How did you know that?
I think it was through looking back on moments where I'd felt happiest and most connected. And sometimes it was being in a foreign country and meeting someone that I never would have expected to meet and connecting with them in a really deep way. So I started to find that my healing was through other people and was through talking to other people and sharing experiences with other people. So there were experiences I'd had in the past where I felt that really lit me up. And I had a few friends who were able to play that back to me. So I think collaboration is the best thing. Like if you're going through something, talk about it with your friends because they will probably have better solutions than you do. And I started talking about this idea kind of where I was with a few friends. And one friend said, well, maybe you should get people to give you challenges to do. So, that's interesting. That could be kind of fun. And I mentioned it to another friend who said, well, maybe these challenges should evoke an emotion. Like the healthiest, happiest people live the full spectrum of emotions, from joy and gratitude to anger and sadness. And maybe there's a way that these challenges can help you feel the full range of emotion. So I thought that was interesting. And I kind of went back to my computer and sort of had one of those moments where I was feeling really fired up around, ooh, I'm having an idea.
I love those moments.
Such a good moment. And then I ended up soliciting, or I put out a Facebook post. I was actually just looking at this yesterday because I realized that, I guess it was 5 years ago.
Wow.
This week, I was preparing to get on the plane. So
how many days or weeks did you have until you put the post up and you were going to go on the trip?
I think it was about 6 weeks.
Okay.
So the beginning of February, I put out this post on Facebook, set up an email address, had anyone who wanted to write me a challenge to do, send it to that email address. And I gave people 3 rules that it had to be something I could do anywhere in the world, because part of what I wanted to do as well was create a blog where other people could follow along and other people could do the same challenges back at home. So it wasn't just unique to me going on a worldwide trip, but it was something that if you were following along in LA or New York or Des Moines, you could do the same thing. Like you could ask a stranger for a mantra, or you could buy coffee for the person behind you in line. So that was the first rule. The second rule was that it had to evoke an emotion. So I took my friend's idea and was like, okay, so how can I make sure that these challenges aren't just things that are going to be silly, funny, quirky, or dangerous, and make sure that they really evoke an emotion. So I got beautiful challenges like, find a wise elder and see how you can help them, or do acts of service for someone else and really build out gratitude, or to, express and feel feelings in different ways. And then the last rule, which is very important for my friends, was to make sure that it was something that wouldn't get me arrested.
Thank God. Thank God you were smart enough to have that as a rule, or else who knows where this could have led you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was also very lucky because I had this idea, I had this email address, and then a friend of mine said, let me turn these into cards for you. So I'm holding a purple box right now with, I think it's 120 handwritten cards that my friend wrote up for me. And she did a little bit of an editing process as well. So she went through and she was like, yeah, I don't want you to get a tattoo. So she'd write little notes like, may I suggest henna? And, a few of them she changed slightly, but they were incredible. They're my most prized possession. I still look through them and, just feel so grateful for them every day. So I didn't see any of the challenges before I got on the plane. I just knew I had this purple box with things that my friends wanted me to do, which was a little bit terrifying.
Was it all friends, or were some people strangers, or did you just really not even know?
Some people were strangers. So there are a few people I'd never met before who wrote flips and challenges for me to do. I had clients as well. So I was working with a lot of, corporate clients and had beautiful challenges from people I'd only known from a work perspective who were sending me on adventures.
Did you have any personal rules for yourself? Like if you opened a card one day and didn't feel like doing it, you could reshuffle it? Or did you tell yourself, as long as the card meets all of those 3 rules, I have to do it on that day?
There were a few I put back for context reasons. Uh-huh. And I did give myself permission to shuffle through at times. I tried not to, and I tried to do the card at hand. And I think what that did for me was really, it shifted my mindset from a yes-no mindset to a how could I mindset. So it moved me into, okay, so I'm looking at this one here, which is from my amazing friend Bella. So she gave me a day of B: eat bagels, burritos, berry ice cream, Baby Bell brownies, brioche, bruschetta, drink beet juice, banana smoothies, breakfast tea, listen to Boys to Men. So it goes on and on. All of these things I could do that would start with the letter B. So for me, this challenge, and I remember doing this in Bangkok, was about, well, how could I make this happen? How could I make this work? And that's where I see people really having breakthroughs and connections, is when they move, or when I move from a linear yes-no mindset to, okay, well, how could I make this work? Mm-hmm. How could I explore what's coming up here?
So you got on the airplane, you had just a one-way ticket, you had these 90 cards. What did you think when you got on that plane was going to happen to your life in the next 3 months?
Wow. I didn't have expectations for it. I knew that I wanted it to be a creative project. So I think what I thought was maybe I'd feel a little happier, more vibrant, or I'd go on a crazy adventure. Or my biggest hope was to really have serendipitous connections and end up in unexpected places, and to connect with people beyond the surface. So I think that was my biggest hope, was kind of getting back into real life almost, because I started to feel like, when we work all the time, or we're just constantly connected digitally, we can forget what it's like to connect with a person in real life. And what would it be like to put away the phone, put away the computer, put away responsibilities, and just be a human for 90 days.
What was your first week like? I mean, I can only imagine the build up for this trip. You're by yourself. You're in a new country. What was that first week like?
So landed in Mumbai, and actually my friend Blair came with me for the first few weeks, which was great. So I remember being in this hotel room with her. I let her pick the first card. I was like, okay, I have this purple box, pick a card. And our first challenge, of course, was to test our sense of danger.
Ooh.
So we kind of went out into the streets of Mumbai and explored around. We're really jet lagged and kind of immersed ourselves in a new culture. And I think the first week or so, a lot of the challenges that I picked were more extroverted challenges. Like I remember one of the first ones was find the happiest couple around and ask them the secret to love.
Did you do that?
Yes. And I remember just looking at couples and sort of being this weird redheaded tourist.
What determined who was the most happy?
There was a level of comfort. Like I remember looking at different couples and there was one that really stood out and they were sitting together. They just looked very cozy, very comfortable, very at ease with each other. And there was, I don't know, you could sort of tell there was a serenity and a partnership between the two of them. So they seemed pretty happy. And I went up to them, which was slightly awkward, but they were thrilled to, have someone ask them about their relationship. And that's a flip that I love to do. I ended up doing it a few years ago. I was at a Christmas dinner with a few friends and we were playing Serenflipity at this nice restaurant in New York. And my friend Gustavo was like, I'm going to Serenflip that couple. And we're this very stuffy restaurant where everyone's in suits and there's lots of, older couples together. And he stopped this couple that was walking by and he was like, I have to tell you, I was watching you during dinner, and he's very charming, so it wasn't creepy. And you guys just seem like the happiest couple in the room. What's your secret? And there was just something she was thrilled. She's like, I can't believe you stopped us and thought we were the happiest couple. And he was thrilled as well. And there was just this really beautiful moment of human connection where I think we're so used to speaking on the surface of what do you do? What do you do? How's your day? The weather's great. To in a non-invasive and open way, being able to ask someone about what gets them out of bed in the morning, when you notice something about them being like, you seem really happy. What is it that's coming up for you, or what's your secret?
What were their secrets?
So family was one for one of the couples. So having a really strong family bond and having children and, really feeling like a united front and caring for those children was one. Another secret to love that came from another couple was communication. Always being open about communicating, being honest and communicating with love. That was a really beautiful one. I mean, the men always joke too. They're like, always saying she's right.
It's true. I like that one.
They're like, she's always right. That's a secret to love.
In one sentence or less, I might agree with that. I think that could be true. So you are traveling around for a couple months with these cards. How do you start to see that it's changing your attitude toward life?
I started to see it was changing my attitude because I think there's sort of a boomerang effect that starts to happen. And the more open I was to other people, the more open I noticed other people were towards me. So I remember about 6 weeks in, I've been doing these flips every day. I was writing a blog. I was feeling really connected. I was getting feedback from my readers as well of people saying, I'm doing this challenge today too, or
wow,
thanks for sharing this, or that's a great story. And I started to meet people, I think with no agenda and a little bit below the surface of just a genuine curiosity, and I started to make friends with people honestly through these cards too. I'd be like, I have to do this thing today. And someone would want to help me do it or would want to join in. And what I noticed was I was more open and I was saying yes to things. And maybe it was just the effect of that. But I started ending up in interesting situations that I didn't expect, like a 1-year-old's birthday party in Amritsar with someone who I'd met on a boat because I had asked her about what makes her come alive. And I'd met her family. She invited me up to visit her. Serendipitously ended up there with another local friend. And I just started to notice, I'd sort of marvel at the situations I was in. Like, wow, I am halfway around the world by myself and I don't feel alone. I feel like I'm surrounded by strangers who are becoming friends. And I think because I was more open, people started being more open with me. And I started to notice everything could be an opportunity for personal growth, for a new experience, for deeper human connection. And I started to shift the way that I saw things, of seeing the world as just a series of random events and kind of an onslaught of random things that come at you, to, maybe there are patterns through this. So, one thing that started to change for me was I invented this rule, or it's sort of a rule, but if I hear about something 3 times from 3 different people, I instantly say yes.
Wow.
So that was something that started on my sabbatical. So I didn't know where I was going for the last month of my trip. I decided to leave it open, and I said, okay, I'm going to leave the last month of the trip open. I'm going to see where the travel gods take me. And I remember maybe in 3 or 4 days, through a new random Facebook connection, through a woman I met in an airport, and there was a third person. I don't remember where the third person came from. They were all telling me to go to Ubud in Bali. So I just said yes. I mean, one of the women in an airport came up to me. She was on my flight. I'd seen her in Bhutan. We ended up being on the same flight, and she came up to me afterwards. And we hadn't spoken at all. And she's like, I don't know why, but I felt like I was meant to wait for you and to tell you that we're going to Ubud next. And I was like, you're the third person who said that to me. So I think that means I need to say yes.
That is wild.
It's wild, but I don't think I would have experienced that or seen that had I not been open, and had I not been in a positive minded mindset, or in a mindset of anything can happen and wonderful things can happen. I think that it's really easy to get conditioned into a mindset of something, the other shoe's going to drop or something bad's going to happen. But what if we shifted the mindset to something incredible could happen, or something incredible is already happening?
I think something very interesting you said is that talking to people with no agenda. And I think sometimes when your life is super busy, or you're an autopilot on your life, all you do is build your relationships around an agenda. You go on dates thinking, how many dates is it going to take till I get engaged? Or is this person the person I want to marry? If not, don't waste your time. Or you meet a friend and you think, well, what is this person going to bring me in my life, and what can I bring them? And it becomes such a pressure-filled situation. Mm-hmm. I think that it's very hard for people to make friends. It's very hard for people to find love, because in their head, they're swamped with well, what's going to happen, and what is this for? And are you at the same level that I am? I think it's a main reason why people don't talk to strangers, is because they're not sure what the agenda is going to be.
Completely.
And because of that, they're scared because they don't know how the conversation's going to go. I think what scares people about walking up to a stranger and saying, what's the secret to you being so happy, is that they're not going to know how that person's going to answer.
Yeah.
They're not going to know what to say next. And because of that, that conversation is the scariest thing in the world.
Absolutely. I still get nervous talking to strangers.
Do you really?
And if I think about, I believe that oftentimes what we create is what we need to heal ourselves. And in a sense, like, this was probably created to heal a little bit of social anxiety, or not knowing how to talk to people, because now I have an excuse. I have a card. I have a thing that I have to do. It becomes a social currency of sorts that gives permission to ask someone a question or talk to someone in a deeper and different way. So, I still get a little bit of anxiety around it, because to your point, it is unpredictable. And I have had moments where I've bought coffee for a stranger. I remember doing this for 2 guys behind me in line in Santa Monica, and they're like, so what are you selling? Or like, what do you want from us? I said, I'm doing this thing today. I do it every Wednesday. I just buy coffee for the person behind me in line. And once people realize you don't have an agenda, there's a palpable relief that you can see and feel. It's like, oh, okay.
See, like, I've always wanted to buy coffee for strangers, but I am terrified. And I've always wanted to, even when I look at these cards and I pick some of them up, I'm like, wow, this is a really great card and everything, but like, I'm really freaking scared, you know? So what tips do you have for people to get over that social anxiety? I mean, like, how do you literally buy coffee for strangers without being so nervous that you're running out the door because you don't want to face them?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just being vulnerable and honest of, I have a personal challenge for myself today. I'm really nervous to do this, but my friend or this company or whoever, sometimes I have a little excuse or, a scapegoat that I can blame on. This person challenged me to buy coffee for the person behind me in line, and you're behind me in line, so can I buy you your coffee today? And I've gotten hugs from strangers. And I've heard incredible stories from other people who play the game who have these experiences where they're like, wow, I bought coffee for the person behind me in line. And it turned out this woman almost didn't come to the coffee shop because she's in a financial situation where she didn't feel she should buy herself coffee. And I think the tips would be, have a little scapegoat or just give the reason and be vulnerable. Trust as well. Like your own fear might be holding you back from helping someone else. And I think shifting the mentality from a mindset of fear to actually, like, maybe I can be of service to this person right now. Like, maybe the person I'm asking needs this and maybe I'm being useful. So I think shifting the mindset into how can I be useful, or how can I bring joy to someone else?
I think one of the reasons why I get scared to talk to strangers or do some of these cards is my own fear of rejection.
Absolutely.
Have you ever tried to do one of these cards or buy someone coffee and they just say, please leave me alone, or I don't want to be part of this, or I think you do have an agenda that you're not telling me about, so I don't want to talk to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't been outright rejected necessarily, but there probably could have been times where I have been. And I noticed too, like when we do our Serenflipity events, and we just did one for a company last week, what's really interesting, when you give people 30 minutes and a flip to do, you will get rejected. And I do remember there was a guy at one of our events who his share at the end was about, when you get rejected by someone else and you get rejected like, hey, want to buy you a coffee or whatever it is, it's not about you. It's more of a reflection of themselves.
So true.
And when I can live life in a place of people's reactions are about them or a reflection of them, and there's always something for me to learn in it as well.
Which I think is one of the greatest superpowers a person could have, is having a high tolerance for the fear of rejection, because it allows you to be in situations that a lot of people would be terrified of, because you just, even if the rejection comes, you have a great way of fighting it off. You don't take it personally. And I think that speaks to every rejection in life, is that sometimes it's just not about you. It's about what the other person's going through, or the job they're hiring someone that they don't like better than you. They're just hiring, Right. And I think when we get rejected, we sometimes think, well, we as a person are not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not confident enough. We're not pretty enough. But rarely is it really about us. And more so about how we handle the rejection, and just turn to the other person behind them in line and buy them coffee instead, because there's always going to be a person who wants to give in to what you're offering. And I think that's really important to remember too.
Absolutely. And there's a great saying that I love, is sometimes rejection is protection.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, sometimes rejection just also reminds you that it's not meant to be.
Right.
And the universe has something, I think, a little bit better planned for you. But talking about plans, I mean, I think probably you can say early on in your life, you didn't imagine your life to end up like this, right? I mean, going for 3 months to Asia, having these cards with you, could you have ever imagined that that was going to be what changed your entire life?
No. And I remember before I went on the trip, a family friend saying to me, and he said this in a paternal, caring way, but I took it personally at the time. He said, if you take this sabbatical and you take this trip, it's going to set you back in your career. You're not going to get promoted because you're taking time off. And I remember feeling so afraid, because all I wanted at that time was more promotion, up the ladder, do better. And that's where a lot of my validation was coming from. And hearing someone say, you're not going to get promoted, or you're not going to advance in your current career if you do this, was a real, kind of hit me in the heart. But at the same time, I still knew I needed to do this trip, which I think is good information. I was like, well, in the state I'm in, I don't think I'm going to be promoted anyway. So, or I don't think I do very well. But it was a really interesting feeling of thinking that was going to be my path, and that I'd probably continue down a corporate path or continue to follow the footsteps that I thought I was meant to do. And I had no idea that this would turn into a business. All I knew was that this was a fun project that I was going to have a little adventure around. I was going to write a blog and maybe I'd do a little bit more blog writing when I got back on the side, but I had no idea it would turn into a business, and I had no idea it would turn into, something that people rely on every day to get out of their comfort zones and find connection and find more adventure. And that was something that, again, I think we were talking before of like that balance of how much do you create and how much is an opportunity, and where those intersect, I think, is where the real power and energy happens.
Are the challenges in the Serenflipity cards you sell the same ones as the ones you traveled with, or are they different?
So they're a mix. So the cards in the deck are based on the 30 adventures that changed my life the most. And I also built in a number of flips and adventures that had changed my life after the adventure as well.
I play these cards with my boyfriend, which is crazy because it's such a great way of getting to know someone you've known for so long even better. Like, we've been together for 2 years, and we've done all these other games where like the love questions of like the 36 love questions you could ask, but none of that is as cool as playing these cards, because it gets you out and about, it gets you working together, it lets you see what the other person's really scared of. I mean, it's just like, I think Serenflipity is a great game to play with people who you think you've known for such a long time, because it brings out like a brand new side of them, and it's really, really cool. When you were on your adventure, what was one card that changed your like whole life?
One card that changed my whole life. I feel like I talk about this one a lot, but it did change my whole life because it was one of those weird serendipitous moments where I had to ask a stranger for a mantra. And, I thought I knew who I wanted to ask for a mantra. I was in Bangkok, and, I figured there are a lot of monks around, or I'd find someone to give me a mantra or some sort of wise words. And that flip started as a joke from an old colleague. And, so it was sort of a funny inside joke. So I was excited to do it. And I ended up, of all people in the world, running into Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, who happened to be in Bangkok in a hotel lobby looking at, a jewelry window or something. And I remember just sitting there and having this moment in the hotel lobby where I had this card in my hand. There's Steven Tyler from Aerosmith over there. And I'm like, am I going to go ask Steven Tyler for a mantra right now?
Oh my God.
And thinking about that internal dialogue you were talking about, I was totally having the great idea. This is meant to be. Like, he's obviously in your path for a reason. He might think it's fun, whatever, to this is a terrible idea card. Don't do that.
What did Esmeralda say to you at that moment?
Esmeralda's like, do not do this. But I sent Esmeralda to the spa, listened to Cara instead. And I think what was really cool was I had a really human moment with him, and the advice or mantra that he gave me, which was the only way to get to the other shore is to lose sight of the one you're on, is the thing that I have used as my mantra to build this business. And that moment of just having a very serendipitous run-in with someone and being able to, not even talk about career or work or whatever, and just have a moment of, hey, I'm doing this thing, I'm on the sabbatical, I have to ask a stranger for a mantra today. And his friend is like, oh my God, you asked the perfect person. Steven has so many mantras. Like, you could not have asked a better person. And, he starts pacing around the hotel lobby, and people start, paying attention. I'm like, oh my God, like, he's probably on vacation. This is terrible. And we just had a really beautiful moment around getting to the other shore. And he's like, yeah, I'm going through this in my life as well. And, I shared a little bit about, I'm at a crossroads myself. And there was something really beautiful about just connecting with anyone, anywhere, and getting advice like that. And, maybe it would have been a different piece of advice and it still would have moved me forward. But I think there is something about when you start a business or when you move or literally moved to new shores. Like, I ended up moving to Singapore and then moving to Los Angeles afterwards, of just taking that mentality of I have to let go of the old shore and to trust that even if I feel like I'm a little boat in the ocean, there is another shore to go to.
Isn't it amazing how even the most famous people who seem like, in a way, they have their lives put together, or at least are so successful that what could they be dealing with, give advice like that just makes them feel human? And did it make you feel like, wow, everyone's going through a little bit of a struggle themselves and I'm not alone?
Absolutely. And I think we're all going through struggles. And with social media and Facebook and Instagram, it's so easy to There's a great quote that I saw on someone's Instagram. Obviously, on someone's Instagram, I'm talking about messes up our brains. You're constantly comparing your B-roll to someone else's highlight reel. And I think it's easy to feel like everyone's got it figured out. Everyone
Nobody's
is doing well.
No
one's got it figured out. We're all human, and we're all going through something. And another friend of mine has a saying of, we're not all in the barrel at the same time, too. I mean, some people, you go through it and you're there to support someone else, and you go through it and they support you. So I find I'm happiest and I'm most fulfilled when I'm in that place of human connection and in a place of we're all just trying to do the best that we can, and no one's perfect.
What's the biggest risk you think you've taken when you started Serenflipity?
Probably quitting my job, moving to Los Angeles, and trying to get the business off the ground with no safety net.
I like that because I think, and I want you to talk to us more about that, because a lot of times people have an idea, they're going to run full speed forward with it. At what point should you quit your job? So at what point did you say, I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 or 9 to way longer than 5, it seems like, and go full speed with this?
I think it's different for everyone. So I'd mentioned I kept my consulting job and my day job for, I guess it was about 2 years, and did this on the side. So I would say there's a knowing inside. It sounds very Yoda. There's a knowing inside where you just know you can't not create it. And again, my situation was one where I had the desire to do it, and I had a shift of circumstances that made it impossible for me not to do. So I was going through some personal challenges and ended up very serendipitously moving to Los Angeles. And my company didn't have an office in Los Angeles. So I was doing a little bit of freelance work for them, and ended up quitting my job because I knew I needed to be here. And that was part of the circumstances, of allowing the circumstances to conspire in my favor and say, okay, you know what, like maybe I'll try this, And I remember, I think one of the things we talked about before is what's the best piece of advice you've gotten? And that best piece of advice, which is such a funny piece of advice, I'll be curious to hear what your listeners say about this, but it came from my father.
Ooh.
And I remember being at this crossroads where I was moving from Singapore to Los Angeles potentially. I was about to quit my job and put my heart and soul into this crazy passion project. And I kind of remember my parents being like, we hope you know what you're doing, because we don't. I love them. And they've been incredibly supportive. And, I think it's scary for them as well as, for the entrepreneur. But I remember talking to my father about my next steps and what I should do. And he said, well, what if you just act as if, or what if you just pretend? Like, what if you say that you're building this business, say you're moving to Santa Monica, all of the things that you think you want to do, own them and say that you're doing them and see what happens. And there was something about moving into an energy of ownership, and I'm building this business, or I'm about to build this business. I'm resigning from my job and I'm starting something new. Instead of being in the question about it, almost trying it on for size and seeing what happened. And I think that was the shift where people started to realize I was committed to it, and I started to realize I was committed to it, versus having it be a potential. Because I think there can be a lot of pain in the deliberation, and there can be a lot of questioning and uncertainty in the, do I do it? Do I not do it? And you waste a lot of energy. Do it and see what happens. So that was, I think, probably my most life-changing advice in terms of just do it and see what happens. Try it on for size. And if it doesn't work, you can change your mind later.
When you were saying those things to yourself or to other people, were you paying attention to how your body felt when you were saying that?
Oh, I felt so nervous. I was like, people are going to think I'm lying, Or I remember changing my LinkedIn and feeling like a fraud a little bit. And then I stepped into it. And gradually, you fill the shoes you need to fill.
Yeah. I mean, people always say trust your gut, and that's just a saying, and I don't really know what that really means, but I know that when I put something out there or I say something, I listen to, like, again, the burning in my heart or the pains in my stomach, and that speaks to me as if, yes, you're doing the right thing, or no, this isn't going to work. Did you get a feeling inside of your body like, wow, this, I'm saying this more and more, and it doesn't feel as foreign or doesn't feel as strange?
Yeah. I think it started to feel more comfortable, and It was one of those things that I couldn't not do, if that makes sense, where sometimes things just happen and move forward and you're a part of a larger wave of momentum. So it started to feel more comfortable. And again, if I think about where we started the interview and sort of that little nod of 3 things in a row or just serendipitous coincidences starting to happen, I always, and maybe it's naive, but I see those as little signs that I'm on the right track. So the more time I'd spend in Los Angeles, I would run into people I hadn't seen in years. You know, I would have all of these very serendipitous connections. And that's sort of, for me, a little marker that I know I'm on the right track. It's just kind of how my brain works. Or I'd say I was starting the business and someone would say, oh, I need to introduce you to this person. And once I committed, and I did it as a 90-day experiment, I said, okay, I'm just going to put my heart and soul into this for 90 days and we'll see what happens. Everything that happened in those 90 days was and is the foundation for where the business is now. So even things like having the cards and someone saying, oh, I need to introduce you to this publisher. You should talk to this publisher. They would be a great partner for you. And allowing people to help you. But I don't think I would have been open to that if I hadn't done the Serenflipity adventure and if I hadn't been in a place of doing that repeatedly for 90 days where everything was an opportunity, and it shifted my mindset of this person I meet could become a new friend, or someone interesting along the path, or someone I can help, or they can help me.
Is there a significance with the number 90?
I have heard that it takes 90 days to build a habit. So I think it's 21 days to sort of build the physicality of a habit, but to emotionally ingrain a new behavior and, a new belief system or a new way of thinking, it takes 90 days. It gives enough time, I think, for me to exercise and build a new muscle, sure, as well as for things to start to happen. And I mean, halfway through, it's easy to get disgruntled or say, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But there's something about committing to 90 and then being able to look back on 3 months and say, okay, now I'm clear.
Yeah. I like that you've been so honest about your journey, because a lot of times people look at their life and they say, I'm not happy. I don't know what to do next. I'm just going to pack up and travel and figure it out. You had a little bit of a game plan, or at least an adventure system to take you that far. But even with starting a business, people look at it and say, I'm just going to quit my job and start the business. And you've been so honest about challenges you've had. I read on your Medium that last year you tried to get Serenflipity into, was it the Time Gala or
oh yeah, into those
House
gift bags, yeah.
So you tried to get Serenflipity into gift bags for a huge event.
Yeah.
What happened?
That was amazing. We did get them into these gift bags for huge events. And well, what ended up happening was it was sort of this balance of I didn't have enough cards left. I think they needed about, between these events, they probably needed, I think it was 1,000 decks of cards.
Wow.
Maybe. I think I had about 200 left. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get into all 3 gift bags, but I'm just going to go for it. And if we need to figure it out, we'll figure it out. And we got into all 3 gift bags.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. So,
and they're not paying you for this. So you're donating 1,000
I'm
cards.
donating 1,000 decks of cards, but it was for, the Time 100 Gala. It was for, something like a People magazine event. It was for a TED Delta flight. So they were all things that I felt really passionate about, sharing Serenflipity with that audience and having the opportunity to be in a bag like that. So we ended up, I found a production company in the US. I ended up working with their prototype division because they couldn't produce enough in such a short period of time. And somehow got 1,000 decks of cards produced. They arrived, the boxes arrived ruined. They had to reship them. It was a total product disaster. But what ended up happening was the power of Facebook and the power of the shared economy. Like, I think if this had happened probably 5-10 years ago, it would have been a disaster and I wouldn't have been able to get them out. But I am on a Facebook group. I think was it Inspired Women of LA? So it's a lot of creative women in LA. And I just put out the bat call. I was like, so I need to get these products into a gift bag. I can pay you in snacks and like $10 an hour. Does anyone want to come over and help me restock and, reorganize and repack decks of Serenflipity cards? And I had 5 women come over, and it was one of those things where at the end of our time together, I mean, we're repacking cards, redoing the packaging, getting them all sorted out. Like, we all felt like we'd been there for a reason. And there were some really amazing connections that happened between the women there too, of coincidences and commonalities and just working together to get this out. And it was one of those things where, yes, there were a lot of logistical challenges, but there was also it was such an exercise in being creative and creative problem solving and allowing other people to help. So people got gifted with Serenflipities, and it was great.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such an amazing thing because you didn't think it was going to happen. It seemed like everything went wrong. Like, I remember reading, like you said, the cards came damaged. Your fingers were literally bleeding from having to pack all of it.
They were bleeding. They were. I was like, please don't get blood on the cards.
Could you imagine these celebrities opening the cards with wonderful blood all over?
I worked my finger to the bone on these.
But I mean, I think it just shows how crazy being an entrepreneur is, and how when there is an opportunity like this, like, you have to pull out all of the stops, and you did. And oftentimes that's asking for help even if you don't want to.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that can be a very big challenging thing to do.
And it's also one of the most wonderful things about being an entrepreneur. When I was in my former career as a consultant, the thing that I craved the most was being able to see a product be realized out in the world. And you're coming up with recommendations for big companies, and maybe something comes out 3 years later, but I had this maternal instinct around the ideas or strategies we'd recommend. I was like, I just want it to exist. And there's something so satisfying about being able to shift on a dime and being able to do it and make things happen and take an idea that's a crazy scribble on a napkin and turn it into a product that's sold in stores.
It's so cool. It's awesome. And it's awesome how this all started from an idea.
Yeah.
All it takes is just one idea, and you honestly never, ever, ever know what is going to happen. So thank you so much for the interview. I do want to ask you just a couple more lightning round questions, if that's okay.
Of
so
course.
Just answer these questions with whatever comes to mind. When you were a kid, what did you want to grow up to become?
I wanted to be a magazine editor.
Really? What kind of magazine?
Well, I wanted to be a fashion magazine editor. My mom was in the fashion business growing up, and I used to write fashion magazines as a kid. So that was my hobby.
I love it. Like, what would you write, the articles or just draw the pictures?
Both. I mean, my mom still has the magazines, which are hilarious. And, they're all beauty recommendations. So I'd write all the articles, and I'd hand illustrate all the pictures. I got my sister to model for things as well, which was hilarious. My poor sister and my stuffed animals were all fashion models. So
she's probably like, please do not pull that magazine out now and show any of my friends. What's your dream job now?
My dream job is doing what I'm doing. I think I absolutely love being able to help people create adventure in their lives. And I love being able to create something that has a positive impact on people and that I constantly learn from and I constantly grow from. Like, it always feels like whatever level of my business I'm at is an opportunity for me to grow professionally, for me to grow personally. So this is my dream job.
Is there a piece of advice you wish you can give yourself now that you would actually start to listen to?
Relax, have a bagel. The New Yorker in me. Relax and trust, and it's something I say to myself all the time, which is a really kind of silly idiom, but I just remind myself it's all happening. It is all happening. It's moving forward. There is momentum. There's nothing to be afraid of.
What's the number one thing you feel an urgent desire to accomplish this year?
Ooh, there are so many things. I want to get Serenflipity to as many people as possible. I'd love to instill, I feel an urgent desire to help people get reconnected, because I do believe we're living in a crisis of connection right now. We're so hyper-connected digitally, but people are craving more real life connection. So I feel urgently that whatever I can do to help people find more of that on a large scale is what I want to work on urgently.
These next two questions are from Facebook, so thank you for people who submitted them. How can people bring more joy into their own lives?
How can people bring more joy into their own lives? That's a great question. I would say for me, what's worked is treating everything with an attitude of adventure and treating everything like a scavenger hunt. So a big part of my journey has been finding serenity in calamity, and really believing and trusting that no matter what's going on in the outside world, I can find a space within me that's peaceful, that's joyful, and full of gratitude. And being full of gratitude doesn't necessarily mean being happy. Like, you can be grateful and you can be sad at the same time. So when I think about creating more joy in my own life, what's worked for me is treating life like a scavenger hunt or treasure hunt, trusting that if something feels uncomfortable, like maybe this is an opportunity to grow. Like, how can I flip something that feels uncertain and scary into an opportunity to grow? I feel like that brings me more joy. Connecting with other people, reaching out to people and just asking how they are, like not focusing on myself, finding a friend, doing something nice for someone who needs it. Like, I find that can shift my mood and help me to find more joy in myself. So I'd say finding the adventurous side, making time to play, and you can be playful at work, you can do things like take a different route to work, or eat something you've never tried before, do little hacks that help to create a little bit more adventure, because for me, at least, it's helped me get out of my routines, and it's helped me get out of my routines with thinking as well, of being able to jump into something else.
And how can people bring more joy into other people's lives?
I think people want to be heard and they want to be, I want to say understood, but I don't know if we always need to be understood, but I think people want to be heard. So I think we can bring more joy into other people's lives by genuinely taking the time and effort to be present with someone. So if you're having coffee with someone or having lunch or just spending time, like putting away the phones and genuinely getting curious, asking why, asking what's coming up for them. And I think where I felt the most joy from others or have felt that connection is when we really connect on a real level and sharing something vulnerable about yourself. For me, it's all about connection and fulfillment. So one thing that comes from a friend of mine, my friend Cara, is asking others how you can help them. So I try to end a conversation or, end a meeting with, what can I do to help you? And taking one action to help someone else. I think that's something that can bring joy to others too.
I absolutely love that. My final question for you is, you're not getting any younger, so...
I'm not.
I wish we all were getting younger.
That's
but
okay. I like getting older.
We're all getting a little bit older, but if we're not getting any younger, what should we do?
Just enjoy. If we're not getting any younger, I mean, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, this is the youngest and prettiest I'll ever be, maybe.
Definitely the youngest, but I think people get prettier.
I think so too. If this is the youngest I'm ever going to be, I mean, I look back on my younger years and I don't think I appreciated what I had at the time. If I think about 21-year-old Cara, 16-year-old Cara, there were always things I was trying to fix. I wanted to be skinnier. I wanted to be smarter. I wanted to be X, Y, or Z. And when I look back on myself at that time, like, I was so cute, or wow, I was doing really well in school, or I was really connected with people. I don't think I appreciated what I had at the time. So if I'm not getting any younger, just fully embrace and appreciate everything I'm surrounded with now.
So Serenflipity is becoming way more than just a deck of cards. Tell us what's next and where people can find them.
So Serenflipity started as a deck of cards. We're launching some new editions in the next year, which should be super exciting. But we've also started to test out a digital platform. So we have been beta testing a personal adventure concierge, which happens by text message. So
cool.
A real person sends you on adventures based on what you're up to that day. And we're starting to develop a game out of it as well. So it's going to be kind of a digital text message game, which is all about getting out of your comfort zone and finding adventure every day and building, connecting people who are living with similar principles around that. Because we start to find that people really want to connect with each other, and we get ideas from each other. You know, if I hear how you're flipping one day or what fear you're overcoming and I'm working on the same flip, like, let's join forces and catalyze each other. So building out digital platform, and then some other exciting news coming to bringing it to a broader level. So right now you can find the cards on Amazon, at Anthropology, a number of stores around the US. And you can sign up for Flip Text on our website. And if you say you're a listener, we'll try and get you up the wait list, because we're a few months out now on the wait list.
It's literally so cool that someone will text you a flip every single day. That is beyond awesome, and also the best thing to wake up to also. So I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to watch. You know, it started with 50 strangers from the internet, and we all know each other pretty well now. There's a really beautiful connection that, for me, is such a fascinating social experiment around, you take two people who've never seen each other, have no idea what each other looks like, what their political views are, what their religious views are, you know, how they live their day-to-day life, but there's a real deep connection, and people share a lot about what's going on for them, what challenges are coming up, you know, going through a breakup, going through a family member's death. And, you know, it's really beautiful to see the power of human connection and vulnerability.
They should make this a reality show. They really, really should. Like that first date show where they put two people on a first date. They should put two complete strangers with probably opposing views. Give them a deck of cards. I would watch that in a second. I am all about that. If you are listening and you make reality shows, hit up Serenflipity, because that would be amazing. Great TV. Well, thank you so much again, Cara, for coming on the show, for all of your advice. Where can people find you personally if they want to connect?
You can find me on Instagram, or you can just find me on Facebook, Cara Thomas. I have a very classy Instagram name, which is a legacy from 7th grade. Cara Muhaha.
How do you spell that? I have to ask.
CaraMuhaha.
I love it. I feel like Esmeralda had something
to do
with
Hit up Cara
that.
Muhaha on Instagram.
I love it. Thank you so much again. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.